I was younger, I looked good and I'd had so much experience. And so, word got passed around about me that I was good. And so I was lucky that, I got work there. But around
Right.
about, so I started having my own agency around then. But I did, I just had a yearning to work for the press. It was in my head. I thought that world was quite exciting. I knew Phil Hall. He'd been my boyfriend and he'd brought me to clubs and like
And
vagabond and so on.
just to recap, who was Phil Hall again?
Phil Hall was the one that wrote the story on me visiting Brady. He was a senior journalist at the Sunday People.
Right, so he worked for the Sunday People.
So I
Okay.
started dating him when he did the story on me, and we went out to the south of France and fell
Ah,
in love.
yes.
I thought we'd fallen
Yeah.
in love, probably
So
different from his side of things.
so moving the story on a bit. So you started getting involved with the newspapers, doing some work for them. Started mixing with the journalists, getting your own reputation. You linked an important, very sort of wealthy, powerful individual up with the press, didn't you? Can you describe that meeting without going into too much detail?
Oh no, that's okay. I had on my travels, I'd come across a man who'd worked for Argon, and I met him through John Ferris Smith from Argon called John. I won't go into his second name at this
That's
point.
okay.
Yeah. He had his own offices in London. They were very swanky. I remember a boyfriend called Ray took me to go and see him to talk about working for him. Just he needed a staff cover, and it wasn't like long term. It was just a couple of months, and he had this, office, and it had the red blinds. And I went in, and he was dressed like a yuppie in a striped shirt, like Gordon Gecko, and very good looking, very, I'd say, upper middle class, and looked a bit like Dirk Bogarde, a young Dirk Bogarde, very refined and very moneyed, good taste. The offices, were beautiful, and I thought, yeah, I want to work here for a bit. He gave me my own office. We started a bit of a fling. Probably shouldn't have, but and then I left and went bounced somewhere else. And I think that was when I went to work for those two ex-CID officers over in Sutton. And so when I was working for the News of the World, I started in 1993, worked 2 years and was just getting bits and bobs from Greg Misker at the News of the World, and then stuff from the Daily Mail, and then stuff from the Sunday People. And I decided to go off to America for a while. And so I just dropped the whole thing and then came back after a year and moved, got a flat right near to the News of the World, and rang up Greg and said, I'm back now and I want work. And that is when the work started really flowing, but it also started flowing from the Sunday Mirror and the Daily Mail. So I was pretty much working, non 8 a.m., maybe earlier through to 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night. And I didn't do anything but work actually. And it was pretty non-stop. And that went on through the 90s. And then I got to a point where Greg and I started having a sort of relationship, a personal relationship. And he started then coming round my flat, which is 10 minutes away from the News of the World, and just putting the whole paper like on me. He would say, I've got this going on. I've got a story about Diana. I don't know how to stand it up, or I've got
When you
this.
said Diana, you referring to Princess Diana.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And so I started to feel a bit, because I had lots of work from other papers as well. I started to feel a bit just overwhelmed all the time. I wasn't, um, realistically looking back, I should have just gone on a bloody holiday. I should have just shut down my phones and gone on a holiday. But because I'm a people pleaser, I just let it go on, get it got on. And I started to just feel overwhelmed. And I was trying to take a degree around that time, psychology degree at a university. So I was going over there as well in the evenings, and I just felt a bit like panic attacky. I remember one time on the tube, I thought people were looking at me, and I got so paranoid I had to jump off. And then one time I started working with Mazen Mahmood, and he got me in a position where I was nearly murdered. So the panic attacks then and the heart thing started to like really increase. And then one day I had been to the gym. There was a gym and swimming pool below my flat. I went down there, went for a swim, did some working out, came back up to the flat, and Greg Miskew was on the phone, and he was going, "Oh, you've got to find out whether Yorkshire Ripper's wife is getting married." And he was like talking really fast and out of breath. And I just felt my heart start really beating fast. And then I sort of like blacked out. And I managed to ring the porter. There's a porter building, and he called an ambulance, got taken to hospital. And there was Greg in the hospital. He had come, just come. He found out from, he rang my porter, and so my porter said, yeah, the ambulance took it. He got straight over there, and it was bad, really. I wish he hadn't, because as soon as I saw him, my heart started hurting. And went to the pub, and I said, look, it's too much work. I know someone called John who has got girls in the basement, and they do like stuff that I don't want to do, like finding people, X directory numbers. I don't want to do that. I want to do like the big jobs where there's a problem and I have to solve it. So I said, just let me stick to that and then get rid of all the dross by giving it to John. And he goes, oh, that's a brilliant idea. And then the next day I woke up and thought, maybe this is a silly idea. I don't really trust him, And I had been out with John for drinks and stuff, and he had commented that he liked where I was living, and oh, this is very flashy. And I started to feel like a bit of a victim somehow. But I set up a meeting in London at the Wolsey. I think it was the Wolsey in Piccadilly. We all three of us went out to dinner, and I went outside during the dinner. And I remember coming back and Greg saying, we're going to go now. And he looked really excited. And when I was talking to the cops, Operation Wheating, when I had my 6-hour interview with them, I said that I think, because they were saying, when was phone hacking born? And I said, I think it was at that meeting. Because Greg was
that's the crucial role that you played, was uniting the intelligence techniques with the techniques of the press and their practices, and the rest is history. So what happened next?
Well, what happened next? Obviously, Boyle, he was a golden boy with the top level, with the ex-MI6 guys. They would all use him to get this and get that. And I was naive at the time. I didn't think that he had moved on since I had worked in his offices, and he'd got involved with cybercrime. He'd got involved with hacking emails. He got involved with hacking phones, and I was blissfully unaware of that. But he then, on that date with Miskew, he had offered it to them. And, it's kind of, I mean, I'd been working for them for a while, and I've had this out with Hacked Off, who have accused me of like spying at the Priory and all this kind of stuff.
We'll get to them. Yeah.
Because I knew what they were like, what journalists were like, that they might well use me for a good few years and then turn me over. I was determined, when I went in there with my eyes wide open, to not trust the buggers, to really look at them cynically and think, thank you for the work, but I do not trust you. And I am never, ever going to do anything illegal for you. Absolutely nothing illegal. And that means not getting work, not getting information from a computer database. So I would do everything that was getting information out of somebody's head, which isn't illegal. They're saying now, oh, that is illegal, but okay, take me to court then. But I believed at the time that it wasn't. So I would get my information out of somebody's head. Now, I assumed that John would know all about the press, because he literally, like me, has been in the business since a teenager. And he's an orphan, interestingly enough, as well. But he was adopted by quite wealthy people. But I assumed that he would know never to bring the press criminal stuff. Having said that, John does criminal stuff, but he is aware. Being somebody like that, he knows things like he will get tipped off by the police if he's going to get raided. He will then take out all his hard drives. So he's one of those slick, like Mr. Big, kind of a bit like that character Larry Lamb played in that movie where he did the diamond robberies. He was, one of those sort of white collar criminals that are very rich people and very powerful people trust them because they're so good at it, and they won't get caught, and they won't get their clients into trouble because they're so slick. And he was one. So obviously he thought, even though he was a multimillionaire then, he is now. He obviously thought, well, because I know this, I will bring the press. But if only somebody had asked me at the time, I would have said, watch them. Firstly, they might turn you over. A lot of them are with cops as well. Secondly, they're stupid. And if you bring them something like that, they're going to put you at risk as well. But nobody told me. So I went home that night. Greg gave me his Burberry Mac. He was so excited. He put his Burberry Mac around my shop, and he never asked for that Burberry back. I've still got that Burberry.
At least you got a Mac out of it. But interesting, sorry to interrupt, but it's interesting that you mention orphans, because have you seen Skyfall, the James Bond film?
Yeah.
There's a bit in it where Judi Dench and James Bond are standing in Skyfall, a mansion, and he was an orphan. She says to him, orphans make the best recruits.
Oh, that's interesting.
We that's what she, and I think she says something else as well, but I thought that's really interesting. So orphans make the best recruits for intelligence, I suppose, because they haven't got a lot of baggage or something like that, without sounding unkind to yourself. So what happened to your journalistic career after that fateful meeting?
Well, after that, I was in the flat in London, and literally overnight, from my phone ringing literally at 8 o'clock a.m. and then just non-stop, it stopped ringing. It just stopped ringing. Stopped ringing.
So complete turnaround from having this absolutely hectic
6 figures
life.
I was at. I have still got the proof. I've got leather-bound accounts from my accountant. I was earning 6 figures. That's profit of 6 figures. And it went to nothing overnight.
Yeah, amazing.
Thanks to John, actually. He just cleaned me out. And after we had had that meeting, actually there was one more meeting. He met me, took me out to dinner, and he came back to my place, and we had made love, if you can call it that. And he sat on the edge of my bed and he said, "Oh, Chris, I haven't got your mobile." And I said, "Well, you've got my home line. Why would you want my mobile?" And, because I thought, it was our way to see each other maybe once every 8 months. And I thought, well, we've seen each other a lot now. What would you want my mobile for? And I got a really bad feeling in my stomach when he asked. But I thought, people pleaser as usual. I said, okay, and gave him my mobile. I think what he did was he hacked me to see who else I had. So, oh, look, she's got the news of the world. This is good. We'll bring them phone hacking. Who else has she got? So I was working for the Sunday Mirror. And interestingly, they're the only ones that have been mentioned, haven't they, in this whole the Sunday Mirror? Well, he hacked them. He found out I was working for them, and he obviously went there for them. And that was it. I was finished. I still had the Daily Mail. I mean, I think they rejected it. Good for them. So I was still working, but I'd never worked, non-stop for them. It was a couple of jobs a week. So basically, I went off to Belfast. I had a boyfriend from Belfast. I was doing stories on the Real IRA that I found interesting. So he said to me, well, why don't, and there was a lot of journalists in Belfast saying, oh, you're writing about the Real IRA a lot. You can't study those boys from a posh flat in London. Get yourself over here. So I thought, well, maybe it's meant to be. So then I just moved lock, stock and barrel over to Belfast.
And the rest is history. So we've got phone hacking going on. The public aren't aware. I think, what was the first blip on the radar of public awareness? Was it the royals that Prince William was being hacked?
Well, what happened? I came back from Belfast, and I came back in. I was pregnant, so I came back 2000 and oh, I had Arthur December 2003, so I must have came back the end of 2002, and I went to see Greg, and I said, I haven't got any money to live. I'm pregnant. I need you to give me investigations work back. You know, I thought it's been long enough now. You know, you and John have had your fun, and I didn't know what had gone on, obviously. And I said, you know, you've worked with him enough now, aren't you bored? And how come you two have got on so well? Because I hadn't heard from him. I said, how come?
Romance.
Well, no, because when I introduced them, I kind of craftily knew, because John is upper middle class and he's, you know, got a cravat and talks like that, and he's very good looking. I thought he would clash with Greg Miskiw, who's Ukrainian, very working class, and hates anything like that. I thought there's no way they're going to get on. So, but they seemingly they had got on. So over dinner with Miskiw, I said to him, you know, how come you've got on so well? And he goes, oh, I don't use John. And I thought, what? I thought, how could, so he hasn't rung me, and I knew I was really good, really, really good. He'd been literally dependent on me. And now he was telling me over dinner that he wasn't using John anymore. And I said, well, how come? And he goes, oh, he's too greedy. And I said, well, obviously he's greedy. And he said, oh, I found out he was working for the Sunday Mirror. So I said, right, okay. And I said, well, what's happening now? I said, obviously, I want work. You know, I'm back from Belfast, giving it a go. I'd got some bylines in the Sunday Times, but I wanted to do investigations work, and I wanted to support my son. And I just bought a house. And he said to me, no, 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 we don't do your kind of thing anymore, where it's all around the houses and thinking up subterfuge and blagging people and doing lots of undercover stuff and little scams. He said, it's totally different now. So I said, oh, how do you mean? Because I've been in the investigations world since I was 16. It's all different now. Well, no, it's not. You know, it's the same.
What year was this again? Sorry to interrupt.
2003.
Okay.
And he said, oh, we've gone high tech with investigations. Well, I keep my finger on the pulse of the investigations world, and it most certainly hadn't gone high tech. So I said, what are you actually saying? And he said, phones. He said, we can get anything with phones. We can find out where someone is. We can listen in. We can. And as I was listening, I thought, oh, yeah, but that's absolutely illegal, you absolute dipstick. I couldn't believe it, because years earlier there'd been a guy called Kader Pendry, right? And Channel 4 had turned him over. I think World in Action. He'd been a PI who had got into all this like pinging and listening in, and they'd gone, right, you're squashed, mate, because it's illegal. It's highly illegal. And I was sitting there and I couldn't believe him. I thought, oh, you're telling me the news of the world has gotten into crime, because that's what that is. It's crime. And he hadn't even mentioned phone hacking. He was just saying like other things that were highly illegal. And I thought, well, I'm not going to fucking have this. Excuse my French. You're telling me I'm out of a job, I'm obsolete, when I've worked for News International for years and years and years, and now I haven't got a job because you've gone into crime. I thought, well, I need to pull the plug on this, you know? And so I thought, well, the first way I'm going to pull the plug on it is to find out who it is, find out what agency it is. And I made a mental note to ask around because it's a really like closed world, closed shop. People would know who's worked for the press. And anyway, over dinner, he kept talking on his phone non-stop. Just kept getting calls. Hang on a minute, I'm just taking a call. Hang on a minute, I'm just taking a call. And it was to someone called Glyn. And when he was talking to this Glyn, he was going, yeah, but you've got to find out. You've got to find out. And I thought, oh, Glyn, well, at least I know someone at this agency is called Glyn. So I went home and I was literally boiling. I was so angry because I thought, well, they can't do it. They're a newspaper. They can't get into crime. I mean, they just can't. So I thought, well, who can I tell? Who can I tell? I was sitting there thinking, who can I tell to crumble this down? And I thought, I know John Boyle because John knows top cops. And I thought, well, at least, I'll tell him and then he'll be indiscreet and let it slip to them. And I thought, well, I wonder what's happened between them and John. Anyway, so I rang and I said, oh, you nicked the news of the world off me and everyone else. And he goes, no, I didn't. No, I didn't. He said, you introduced me. He said, anyway, he said, they kicked me into touch after a couple of years. He said, they owed me $250,000 and I had to go to Andy Coulson and threaten him, basically blackmail. He said blackmail, but, he was talking in private to me. I said, oh, well, how did you blackmail him? He said, I had to go and say, look, I've been listening to lots of, he actually said at that point, listening to lots of listening in on telephone calls. He didn't say messages, listening on telephone calls for this politician, that politician, this celebrity, that celebrity. And by the way, I'm going to go and approach them now if you don't give me my $250,000. So Andy Coulson paid up and he said he got the money. And I said, well, what are they doing now? I thought I won't go over the obviously illegalities that he's been doing. But I said, well, how come they got rid of you if, they obviously using you a lot for the, whatever he was listening into the bloody phone calls, which obviously shouldn't have been doing. And he said, no, I don't know who they're using. I said, well, I do. I just had dinner with Greg Miskiw and he was talking to someone called Glyn. And he went, you're kidding me. Say that name again. I said, Glyn. And he goes, I'm going to absolutely destroy them. I said, what do you mean? He said, that was my office boy. I said, you're kidding me.
Was that Glenn Mulcair?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So all this crap and lies that everyone's putting out about it was a private detective who was listening into the royals. No, what Greg Miskiw had done, because John Boyle, with his massive security, they never would have got caught for doing anything with John Boyle. And John Boyle was smart enough, he wouldn't have gone near the royals. So they should have stuck with somebody who was actually a private detective. But they took all the criminality and all the Mr. Big knew about and took his little office boy that didn't even barely know the time of day, but just did, the grout work and stuff in his basement and stole him and seduced him, said, you can have 100 grand a year. Here, we'll take you out to all these fancy restaurants. You've got to just work for us and do what we say. So basically, they became John Boyle. But there's just one string attached to that. They don't know the first thing about being a private detective, and nor did Glenn Mulcair, because he was a little gopher. And that is how it happened, and that's how it crashed. And sadly, because Nick Davis, who came to me, I think it was in 2008, 2009, and said to me, he knows all about John Boyle, and I want you to cough, Christine. You dated him. Oh, and you dated Greg Miskiw. So you introduced them. I'm writing a book. Would you go on record? So I met up with him. We had lunch. And I said, I'm not going to talk about John Boyle. I'm not, because he knows too many people and it's dangerous. So he said, fair enough. And then he met up with me a good few times and he kept saying that he was investigating John. He'd found this out. He'd found he owned loads of houses in London, this politician, that politician. He found out about high-class call girls, which I knew about anyway, because I'd stayed in one of these houses when I was homeless one time and I'd seen these beautiful girls walking around at nights and cocaine and all this kind of stuff. And he said, what do you know about that? I said, I know absolutely nothing. And I thought, this is quite exciting because Nick had found out quite a lot. And I thought, well, when his book comes out, there's going to be like a massive expose of this very powerful figure that has been looking after the, XMI6 boys for many, many years. This is going to be shit. It's the fan. But what happens when Nick's book comes out? Well, absolutely nothing, because he's left John out of it.
It's always covered up an intrinsic, basic part of how phone hacking actually came into being. Can I just divert for a second? So I'm just looking at, I know Wikipedia isn't ideal, but I'm just for brevity and everything. I'm looking at Wikipedia's News International Phone Hacking Scandal, and it says conducted from 2005 to 2007 appeared to show the paper's phone hacking activities limited to celebrities, politicians, and members of the British royal family. In July 2011, it was revealed that the phones of murdered schoolgirl Millie Dowler, relatives of deceased British soldiers, and victims of the 7th of July 2005 London bombings had also been hacked. So we changed tack now. We're not just listening in on the celebs, the politicians, and the royals. Now we're getting really down and dirty, and we're hacking the phone of, and Millie Dowler was what, a young teenager when she was abducted and killed.
Yeah.
Relatives of deceased British soldiers and victims of a terrorist attack. The relatives of victims of a terrorist attack. So it was being just used ruthlessly.
Well, why it was used ruthlessly, because, and this is what's annoyed me about the new company, and I know it's Judd Apatow is involved, and he needs to know the proper truth, or the story won't make sense. And every private investigator knows, especially one of Boyle's level, and everyone, even the lower level ones, you do not do things like that. You just don't do things like that. And the reason why they were being done is because Mulcair wasn't a private investigator. He was taken in by Boyle, trained to do these little blags. He didn't know much about. Greg Miskiw gloated that he was thick as two short planks. Basically, they got him and they manipulated him. It's okay if you do it. Oh, you won't get into trouble. You're covered by us. It's okay. Oh, it's not criminal because, we can say it's covered by public interest. So this poor man was basically just, completely used. But when it came to when it was all found out, he got sort of blinded and dazzled by the the publicity. He was like, oh, I've done this amazing thing, and I'm going to claim it, and I'm a private investigator. So it kind of muddies the water even more. I mean, I think it was down to Nick Davies to to write what he'd found out, to tell the story he knew, and yet he didn't do it. And there's many journalists like James Hanning, the Independent on Sunday's editor, that are shocked at him, that think, that there was dirty goings on there, that he was maybe paid something, that maybe he was offered.
He was describing a narrative, wasn't he?
Yeah, because he knew all about it, and he came to me desperate to find out. And I said, I don't know John Boyle. I don't know him. I thought, I'm not going to get involved in this. This is going to go really big. It's going to be really messy.
Right.
And yet it wasn't. There was no mess. It was like, whoa, what? I couldn't even believe it when it happened. And there was a massive cover up, Jana, because I was going to be a star witness. Now, Wheating, where they sat with me 6 hours, I had a 60-page witness thing, and they said, well, you're going to be one of the witnesses. Sean Hall was another one. And they said, before it happens, we're going to drive you up to the court so you look around, so you feel at home and you're not scared. Now, I wasn't scared, but they said to me, did I want to go under a witness protection program? And I said, what? Because of John Boyle? And they went, no, News International. I said, well, they're a load of old men. They're not killers. I said, hang on a sec. Are you trying to say they murdered Sean Hall? And the guy looked at me, the head cop, and he just went, "Do you want to go under witness protection?" And I thought, I still didn't believe him. I thought, really?
Somebody else was murdered in the very early investigations during Operation Nigeria.
Was that Daniel Morgan?
Yeah, Daniel Morgan. So, right.
Well, Daniel, interestingly, a lot of people think that the News of the World did that actually, because Southern was working for the News of the World, and he found out. Well, he knew. He probably found out they were doing all sorts of dirty goings on with serving cops and stuff like that, and he was probably going to blackmail them. And I think, didn't Alex Marinchek make a phone call or something like that? I don't know. That's what I heard.
Okay. Well, let me read this out just to give sort of because this is really complicated and it goes on for about 20 years, like I said. So the early investigations, Operation Nigeria. I'll just read out a couple of sentences. Private investigators who were illegally providing information to the News of the World were also engaged in a variety of other illegal activities. Between 1999 and 2003, several were convicted for crimes including drug distribution, theft of drugs, child pornography, planting evidence, corruption, and perverting the course of justice. Jonathan Rees and his partner, Sid Fillery, a former police officer, were also under suspicion for the murder of private investigator Daniel Morgan. The NPS undertook an investigation of Rees entitled Operation Nigeria and tapped his telephone. Substantial evidence was accumulated that Rees was purchasing information from improper sources and that, amongst others, Alex Maranchek of the News of the World was paying him up to $150,000 a year for doing so. Jonathan Rees reportedly bought information from former and serving police officers, customs officers, a VAT inspector, bank employees, burglars and blaggers who would telephone the Inland Revenue, DVLA, banks, phone companies and deceive them into releasing confidential information. Rees then sold the information to the News of the World, Daily Mirror, Sunday Times. The Operation Nigeria bugging ended in September 1999 and Rees was arrested when he was heard planning to plant drugs on a woman so that her husband could win custody of their child. He was convicted and served a 5-year prison sentence. I could go on, so that kind of gives a little bit of backstory. So right, so you're written out the narrative. We want to know why you're written out the narrative, why it's been covered up. Not that you've done anything wrong, but
no. Why that guy, sorry, Rees, he had an office right near John. I used to pass that office going to work for John.
Right.
Southern, I remember it. And I remember when Daniel Morgan, because it is such a small world of private investigators in London, when Daniel Morgan was murdered, I was working for Nationwide Investigations, and we all used to drink in a pub near where he was murdered, and Stuart Withers and Barry knew about it. And interestingly, Barry was sitting there laughing about it, saying, "Oh, he must have pissed off a client." And then Barry ends up beaten to death in his bath, you know.
And sorry, who was Barry again?
The private detective who ran Nationwide.
Right. Okay, right.
He was a hard man. You know, a lot of, Sid, oh God, what's his, why can't I ever think of that guy's name? I think because his name doesn't actually suit him. He's quite a chunky guy and he's called Jonathan Rees, which is quite a name for someone thin and delicate. But Jonathan Rees and Barry Trigwell, they knew each other, and so did Stuart Withers. And they were a kind of another breed of private investigators where they were like sort of like heavies, they were like gangsters.
Yeah.
And I remember when working for Withers, we had the office bombed. Somebody bombed it. Unbelievable. And when we came to work, the door was blown off and there was black soot everywhere. But they were pretty much like gangsters. And I remember when I was working for Stuart, I said I was going to leave. I said, "Oh, I want to write." I'd been there about 3 years or so. And I said, I want to write a book. And he said, well, we're a bit dependent on you here. You know, when cases come in, there was a lot of ex-MI6 guys there, like Gary Watkinson. And I had my own office. And he said, I don't want you to leave because we've got cases coming in and you'll be leaving us in the lurch. And I said, well, I want to be a writer. I don't want to do this. And he went, okay, I'll put it this way. I will break both your legs if you leave. How about that? And then he
Who
walked
said
out.
that?
Stuart Withers.
Stuart Withers. And he was
Nationwide, but
right.
they knew Jonathan Rees. They knew each other because they were the same type of, you know, it was all violence and all that. I mean, you know, and the stuff they used to do, they were super illegal, you know, like
Yeah, it goes on. The rest of the description of Operation Nigeria goes on to describe just loads of really dirty tricks. So we've got 2 people dead, an office bombed, and this is early on. So we'll just switch back to kind of like the public perception of it, because the public don't know anything about this. So right, Millie Dowler's kicked off, and the other people that were being hacked, phones were being hacked. So Prime Minister David Cameron announced on 6th of July 2011 that a public inquiry known as the Leveson Inquiry would look into phone hacking and police bribery by the News of the World, consider the wider culture of ethics of the British newspaper industry, and that it might sound a bit vacuous, but actually that's very important, and that the Press Complaints Commission would be replaced entirely, again, very important. A number of arrests and convictions followed, most notably of the former News of the World managing editor, Andy Coulson. Okay, then, so where are you at this point in time then, Chris?
This was 2011?
So David Cameron announced on 6th of July 2011, because there was such a public outcry to Millie Dowler's phone being hacked, because for the listeners, just to explain quickly, early on when she was missing, and it wasn't known that she'd been murdered, and nobody knew about Levi Belfield, who was the murderer. Her parents thought that she was alive, because there were, I think, some of the phone messages had been deleted, because part of phone hacking is you can listen to phone messages, and it looked like she'd been using a mobile phone basically, and she hadn't. Was dead. So it gave her parents false hope, and it was the immorality.
But this is also why, you know, Greg Miskew and Andy Coulson and Rebecca took that on. They became John Boyles, but they didn't have the nous of someone like Boyle,
yes, exactly.
who never would have done that. Who would have said, no, we can't do that, because, you know, one of the first rules in investigations, and you get taught it as soon as you get in the door, if the cops are investigating a crime. And Wheating, actually one of the officers I had an officer minding me. He was called Officer Michael White. Now he had to ring me every week to see if I'd been threatened by anybody, meaning News International, but you know, it's unbelievable, isn't it? And that he called me up and he said, I found an invoice from you, says Millie Dowler, and it's £145. He said, can you come in the office and explain it? So I went in and I explained that to them, because they said, well, you asked to work on it. And I said, I remember Greg saying to me, the cops are trying to find, you know, a missing girl. And I remember thinking, you know, and I said to the cops at the time, I have been trained that when the cops are investigating something, a private investigator will step back. And they'll step back because if they start nosing and sniffing around, they're going to confuse things for the cops. So you let cops do their thing. And if you're the kind of private investigator that has a relationship with the cops, then you let them feed you or you know, whatever. But you can't go and step big feet on their work, basically. And they said to me, did I do anything on it? And I said, absolutely nothing. And they said, well, what is £145 for? I said, we see that all those invoices there were 195. I said, yeah. I said, that's when I picked up the phone. I said, but that £145 is me not picking up the phone. And he said, what, that was just someone asking you to do the job? I said, yeah, that is what I charged for not doing anything. He looked at me, I said, I know, I'm sitting here like poor right now, and I used to earn that kind of money. It was hard for me, you know, to kind of tolerate, but that is what went on in those days. But what they didn't realize, what, you know, Greg didn't realize, and the others, is to step back. And also the trick that they thought was so fantastic, it, because when they listened to somebody's voice messages, they would go into the listen to box. And so it wasn't like they were doing something. When you're a spy, you're supposed to be a ghost. They weren't being ghosts, because the victim, if they, you know, listen to their phone, it says you've got no messages, then you've got 2 saved messages. And if they listen to them, they will then realize that they've been, you know, compromised. So it's not
Yeah.
really a good trick. It's a stupid trick. And as I explained to Acme Films that are filming for Channel 4 an expose on this as well, the guy interviewing Max is a very good interviewer and a director. He said to me, this all sounds like Carry On Spying. I said, it is. It absolutely is. It was stupidity, gross stupidity. It was news editors being private investigators and not even knowing what, you know, what a private investigator even is, and getting in bed with one of these sort of, you know, dark and dangerous ones, and thinking that they could ape them. I mean, it's just, it is Carry On Spying. It is. It's like Sid bloody, you know, what's his name?
Yeah. James.
James. I mean, it just is. It's the stupidity of it, of men that were on a high salary and got so sexed up by the whole thing, which
Yeah.
struck me. There was a little bit of that going on, a little bit of, oh, we're private detectives. How sexy is that? Oh, we're James Bond. How sexy is that? They weren't happy with being news editors, which is sexy enough, isn't it? But they weren't happy with that. They really thought, let's be James Bond. And now we're being James Bond. Well, it was like, carry on, James Bond, you know, because that's how stupid it was.
Okay, this is getting ahead of things a bit, but do you think, in your opinion, that the reason why the phone hacking happened was that there was an agenda behind it to really undermine one of the tenets of our democracy, which, as you know, is journalism, a free press? So it would, the result of it, it was known, it was part of a plan to restrict the freedom of the press. Or do you think, it sounds like you think that it was just greedy journalists and they just got out of control with
Well,
using.
no, because what's interesting about that, looking at it in that aspect, and I only looked at that, and I was reading, David Icke wrote down that the phone hacking was a setup. It was an MI6 setup. As I read it, I thought, hang on, let's see it through those eyes. And then and this was after I read that, after I read Hack Attack by Nick Davis. And when that came out, I had been working with the Sunday Express as an editor there, called James Murray. And James Murray was meeting me weekly and helping me with my book about the phone hacking and my role in it, whatever. And he said, oh, you're sitting on a goldmine here. People will love, you know, what you did, your side of it, your story from the inside, and what really went on. And what happened when, because I'd spent so much time with Nick Davis and helped him so much, I thought, you know, I would be in his book too. And when I read it, not only was Boyle not there, he got a little mention. He could have been the office cat. He didn't tell the story. He just, the whole, I mean, it's just a joke, really. I get angry when I think about it. And he didn't mention me either. He's mentioned me in the back as Queen of the Blaggers, and one of the detectives that work for the News of the World. He's called me an alias. I think on page 199, he's called me York. And I said to him, I didn't want to be called an alias. I want you to use my real name. And he said stuff like, she tried to help me but couldn't. I mean, you know, that was kind of patronizing.
Oh, that's so
And
annoying.
yeah,
It's
I
like,
was so shocked that he did that. And then it made me think, hang on, what has gone on here? Why and who doesn't who doesn't want Boyle mentioned? Who wants Boyle kept out of it? And I thought, well, is it that? So you see, now something really interesting happened, right? It was about 1998, something around there, and I was working with an army guy called Martin, and I got a phone call. I had an advert in Yellow Pages. Now, it might seem greedy. I was already earning a lot from the press, but I wanted to have an advert in the Yellow Pages, and it had ex-military surveillance, and I used my second name, Joanna Hart. And I got a phone call out of the blue. It said, "Oh, hi, we're a computer company. We need help. Would you come and see us? We need surveillance." And I thought, that's fine. I'll bring Martin, because he was hanging around. Went along to their offices. They said, "Oh, we've tried 6 detective agencies to find where this filmmaker lives. He's come over to South Africa. Want to find out where he lives." And their offices were on Buckingham Gate, very nice offices, kind of in a basement kind of thing. And they said, "Yeah, to put him under surveillance." So I said, "Fine, we'll do that." Anyway, priced up the job, left Buckingham Gate, and Martin says to me, they were MI6. And I said, "No, they weren't bloody MI6, don't talk wet." So we did the job. There we were, running around Buckingham Palace with walkie-talkies. This guy took us round and round the outskirts of Buckingham Palace. God knows why. Then he shot across the green. Martin went after him. I took a taxi. In the end, we waited outside a cocktail bar. Then he came out, went down a side road and jumped on a bus. And at that point, I was going to get on the bus, and I looked at him, he looked at me, and I thought, this isn't going to work. So I rang Andrew, who worked at the computer company, and I said, he was a South African guy. I said, "Andrew, we screwed up. I haven't got it." And he said, "That's okay, that's okay." And then it was a couple of days later, I was up at the News of the World waiting for Greg to finish to go to the Old Rose to have a drink with him. And there was a phone in front of me, and I heard a little voice inside my head that said, "Ring those offices where that guy is, helping the people." He was from South Africa, but he was at this film company. And I sort of said back to this little voice, no, obviously wasn't hearing it, it was like,
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
I said back to it, "Well, it's 9 o'clock at night. There's nobody going to be in the bloody office." And it again said, "Ring the office." So I looked in my bag, got the phone number, and rang. And there was a cleaner there. And I said to the cleaner, "Oh, I've got a parcel for thingy. Gosh, I can't remember his name, but the one who's putting up the film guy from South Africa." I said, "It's for the South African film guy, but where's he staying? I don't know." And he goes, "Oh, he's staying with Mick." And so then the next day, ringing and, blagging Mick to get his home address was a piece of piss. Anyway, I rang this computer company, and I said what I'd done. I said, "I'm a little bit psychic, got a sixth sense," and that's how I managed to get the job. And here was me thinking, this makes me sound as if, wow, they're going to use me now non-stop. Never heard from them again, but that's a separate story. Anyway, they said to me, "Well, come in the office to give the result." And I thought, well, this is a bit weird, because I've just given you a result. What do you want me to come in the office for? And they said, "Come straight away." And Martin wasn't around, so I went down there, Buckingham Gate, sat down it showed me in a boardroom, sat on the long table. Next thing, all these quite important looking men came in. There was about 6 of them. And Andrew introduced them as ex-New Scotland Yard, ex-terrorist squad, this one, that one, high cops, mostly high-level cops. And they sat down, they said, "Right, we want to know what's going on at the News of the World." And I said, I thought, how the fuck do you know what I'm doing, mate? And I said to them, "What do you mean?" And this guy said back to me, "We want to know how much access the News of the World has to the boys at Hereford," meaning the SAS.
Oh, the SAS.
So I pissed myself laughing, and he goes, "What? Why is it so funny?" I said, "They have full access. They use them the whole time," because I'd worked with these serving SAS guys. They had serving SAS guys following politicians around.
Oh,
So
you've
I,
spoken about this, yeah, in past
so I,
shows.
I was laughing, and he said it's not funny. And then Andrew says, "Do you know who we are?" And I thought, well, I don't. And then I remember what Martin had said, that they were MI6. So I thought, well, I'll just throw this out. I said, "You're MI6." He goes, "Clever girl." I thought, well, I wasn't. It was
Uh,
only because Martin had said I didn't have a bloody clue. Well, that's interesting, Jonna, that happened before. And I'm wondering, was there like, were they maybe tapping me?
yeah,
And yeah, and then it was like, okay, she's brought in Boyle. Now we'll approach Boyle and say, okay, why don't you give them this? It's illegal. Let them speak to your office boy. They'll maybe steal him. And maybe it was a kind of a setup, to kind of, I don't know. I mean, was it? I don't
maybe it's
know.
a combination. Maybe it's a combination of the journalists getting out of hand because he found, and like you said, they used Glenn Mulcair because he was basically a useful idiot. And maybe there was an agenda. Because so what year was this that you were approached by MI5?
It was 1998, MI6,
Uh,
1998. It
MI6.
was it was a company. They're called CIEX Limited along Buckingham Gate. They're Michael Oatley's company. Michael Oatley is a famous MI6 character. James Oatley has run it, and they had an office guy, Andrew, South African guy, who was running it. But the shareholders and that were top cops. I mean, you're talking the cream,
Yeah, that's interesting that you should say that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the police, the Metropolitan Police, come up in this time and time again. And I don't mean just as part of an illegal investigation. I mean in other aspects of the whole of the phone hacking thing. So do you think you chasing the South African guy was just a test, really? Was just like to bring you in, to sort of rope you in without it seeming too obvious?
I don't know. I wasn't really robbed in. I think they wanted to know what they were doing with the SES, and I told them. I said, yeah, they're using them. They're using serving guys. They had some ex guys run by a guy called Rab, but they were also using serving.
Well,
So I told them
but
everything. I
surely they would
told
know that. Surely they would know that. That just seems like a ruse. I don't
really.
buy that. Surely they would know that. You know,
So what from me?
oh, it's crazy, honestly. Uh, right, we're at the top of the hour. Are we going to break? Well, let's carry on talking for now.
Okay. What I think is strange is just the what's happening now, like this company, this good company, doing the TV series, and Judd Apatow is involved. He did Life Begins at 40. He does every film out. You look at every film and there it is. It's got his name on. It's unbelievable. And he's got his little daughter in it, and she is blinding actress. Absolutely talented of
I
her.
find this very interesting that this has it actually been made or is it being made?
Well, they said somebody rang me. So I did the filming recently with a film company. They're doing it either Channel 4, Channel 5. So I was
Yeah.
filmed by them. Then another documentary people rang me last week, wanting me to talk about Mazza Mahmood. So I was talking about him, and they said, would you get filmed for it? I said, I don't mind. And they said, would he be filmed? And I said, I'm not being funny, but he has gangland people out that want to kill him.
Is he
So
out, Nick?
yeah, he's out.
All
But
right.
the idea of him coming forward, he's not going to come. Of course, he's not going to come. He has contracts out on his life. I mean,
Yeah.
he's going to be hidden. And so they said they wanted to do something on Mazza. And then this guy said to me, "Have you heard about the film?" And I said, "No. I know there was a George Clooney one, supposedly, but seemingly these people, they've got together and they said they interviewed private eyes and journalists. Well, I'm not. I mean, who did they talk to? Well, if they talked to Mulcair, they would have got just a load of rubbish, because he would have just said, "Yeah, I'm this PI and I did this," and that would have been the end of it. And then if they're going to do that, they're just they're just going to leave out the whole underbody of what actually really went on, which, I mean, it will just be like false. It will be fake.
This is
Bit like Nick Davies.
Spun, isn't it? It's being spun. There's a spin doctor at work somewhere. They've got to try. I think this is connected to GM News coming out. GB News, sorry. Rupert Murdoch is launching a new news channel in the UK for the American listeners called GB News. I'll just describe it quickly, Chris. Sorry. And basically, the content is going to be for people who are, how can we say, are not very impressed with the current state of mainstream media news in the UK because they find it to be quite biased and not reporting neutrally. And so some big names are joining GB News, like Andrew Neil, who was a permanent fixture of the BBC politics programme at one point, and Dan Wootton, who was the editor of The Sun. So we're getting some big names. So I find it interesting that Rupert Murdoch's launching this media channel, and then we've got Judd Apatow making this series. Is it a series or a film?
It's a series, and it will. Judd Apatow, he's out there. Honestly, you can't get bigger than him. Have you seen? He's on everything, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a big name.
So
this is all looking a bit weird.
It's looking a bit weird, and I read what they said as well about the series. One of the guys who's writing it, he says it's written already, I think. He says this is a big story of our times. It's a very important story and it needs to be told. Well, yeah, if you're going to tell the story about what really happened, then yeah, of course it is, because it's MI6's involvement in the phone hacking. But if you're just going to tell it with more care, you're going to make out he's a private eye and insult every single private investigator that ever was. Okay. Because it just says that they're absolutely borderline not intelligent at all, but literally can hardly think for themselves. So you're going to do that to the public. So what story are you going to tell? What story are they going to tell?
Is this going to be dramatic or is it going to be a documentary? Chris, have you gone? I can't hear anything. Hi.
Oh, sorry. You're back now.
Yeah. No, you dropped. I thought you dropped out. I said, is it going to be a dramatization or is it going to be a documentary series?
They did a documentary, and then somebody said, "Oh, this is too good. You've got to have it as a series." I mean, I'm bothered, and I don't know if I should be bothered. I mean, I ask myself, why am I bothered? Okay, they're going to do a TV series. They're going to make out private investigators are completely retarded, and they're not going to tell the true story, which is not interesting. Why do I care? I was asking myself. But then the more you think about it, the more you think, what's actually going on, though? What is it? It can't be just, oh, everybody's scared of John. Now, there was a woman called Sylvia Jones. She's ex-BBC, top lady, investigative journalist, proper. She wanted to do she wanted to do a docu. She's done IRA stuff, a lot of it. She wanted to do a documentary on Boyle. She got it all together, tried to give it to Channel 4, and she got kicked back. And she was really upset about it. She said to me, she got extra stuff. And I said, what? She goes, I can't tell you, but it's even worse than phone hacking. I said, please tell me. And she said, no.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That doesn't bode very well.
Yeah, she said it involves top cops. And then when she got kicked back, she was absolutely gutted. And she says it's because Boyle knows top cops and he's done work for them. But I can't see it myself. I mean, maybe I'm not seeing him.
No, even just reading through the Wikipedia pages, and it's a lot to read. The Met Police keep coming up time and time and time again. So this is really.
What would they have done? I don't understand though. What would they have done? I mean,
quite a few things. I mean, well, without going into, what the police are capable of doing. I mean, look at Hillsborough. And look at what's happened with the grooming gangs. If the police don't want to do something, or if they do want to do something, they do it because they're above the law, basically, aren't they?
How can they be guilty in this carry on spying scenario?
I don't know. I mean, they have a legal duty to investigate, don't they? Because people have committed crimes. Like, I can't remember what crime it is if you hack into Prince William's phone, but I'm pretty sure it comes under a certain. So they're because I'll give you an example. What is it? When you go back to Jonathan Rees, I read something that the police had absolutely loads and loads and loads of documents. Right. Well, right. Oh, here we go. Let me read this paragraph as an example. January till June 2011. Operation Wheaton begins. Right. So the Metropolitan Police announced on the 26th of January 2011 that it would begin a new investigation into phone hacking following the receipt of, in apostrophes, significant new information regarding the conduct of News of the World employees. Operation Wheating would take place alongside the previously announced review of phone hacking evidence by the Crown Prosecution Service. Between 45 and 60 officers began looking over the 11,000 pages of evidence seized from Mulcair in August 2006. In June 2011, the issue of computer hacking was addressed with the launch of Operation Tuleta. And then it goes on to describe about News International's law firm. I mean, it's just so complicated. First arrests began 5th of April. Ian Edmondson and the News of the World's chief reporter Neville Thurlbeck were arrested on suspicion of unlawfully intercepting voicemail messages. Both men had denied participating in illegal activities. The paper's assistant news editor, James Wethrope, was taken into custody for questioning by Metropolitan Police on the 14th of April 2011. He had also dealt with some major fiscal issues, managing huge budgets and crisis management at the newspaper. The Guardian, referring to the Information Commissioner's report of 2006, queried why the Metropolitan Police chose to exclude, so here we go, exclude a large quantity of material relating to Jonathan Rees from the scope of its Operation Wheating inquiry. The News of the World was said to have made extensive use of Rees's investigative services, including phone hacking, paying him up to $150,000 a year. On the basis of evidence obtained during Operation Nigeria, Rees was found guilty in December 2000 of attempting to pervert the course of justice and received a 7-year prison sentence. After he was released from prison, the News of the World, under the editorship of Andy Coulson, began commissioning Rees services again. So, I mean, I could go on reading loads more, but obviously what we want to hear is your voice and your opinions about events. So, it looks like there's an agenda.
Well, Tuleta, I was interviewed by them as well. That was
Right.
about email hacking. But interestingly enough, they wanted to know whether a guy called Phil Campbell Smith, he was a private investigator, proper private investigator, that ex-Northern Ireland had spied a lot on the IRA, and they wrote him in basically with all this stuff they got, from the ex-military. I'm wondering, why they, got the idea. They never used to be like that. It's like they got oil and then it was, oh, let's do everything criminal. Let's hack emails as well, But
So, who was the person who said about the involvement of the top cops again? And it was Sylvia
Jones.
Right, and she had information. She took it to Channel 4. Channel 4 kicked it back. So the media's in on it. The broadcast media kind of thing, TV. So that would explain quite a lot then, really.
Does it?
In the sense of, George Clooney has a bit of a political activist left-wing figure in the film industry because of the films that he's made. You know, I mean, he's even made that film, what is it, The American, and that's got loads of MK Ultra things written all over it about an assassin. But it's basically it's about an MK Ultra person without saying anything. But if you know about MK Ultra, you know what that film's about.
Right.
So the fact he was going to get involved potentially speaks volumes to me, because they bring him in whenever they want to get an angle on something. I mean, he did that film about it was about Monsanto, but obviously they didn't name Monsanto. It was the name of a man. And he was a politician, and basically in the film they showed you probably what really goes on behind the scenes, and there were people being assassinated, all kinds of things. So if you brought George Clooney in to make a film about this, there would definitely be an angle. What the angle would be, I don't know. Would it be evil Rupert Murdoch and evil Rebecca Brooks exploiting child murder victims' parents and things like that? Well, yeah, that would be a very simple public relations angle, but there's a lot more to this. And with them, what this Sylvia lady's saying, a hell of a lot more to this. And if you know, it sounds dangerous. I think we're getting into danger territory. What do you say?
Why dangerous? What do you mean with Boyle?
Just if this lady, the investigator, she's got stuff about top cops, and something out additional to the phone hacking, it going further. Well, you say, I mean, well, there's already 2 people dead in a bomb attack, isn't there?
I couldn't believe that Operation Wheating said to me, did I want to go under witness protection? I laughed, and he looked at me and I went, hang on. I said, do you think they killed Sean? Because I thought that must be. And he just looked at me and I thought, and then when I didn't ring them one week because it was Christmas, they just came bursting round 9 o'clock, said, can we come in? They were at the door, and I thought, isn't that enough? You've seen me. I'm not dead or, you know, stabbed or whatever, like Sean fell forward over my Weetabix. But they said, can we come in? And I thought, well, I haven't taken the Christmas tree. I was in my nightie even.
And this was the Met Police.
Wheating, yeah, Thames Valley Police.
Right.
And they came in. One of them went straight upstairs. The other one went out the back and was looking around. I was standing in my nightie in the living room thinking, what are they doing?
Right.
And then they came down and they said, has anybody got to you? I said, no. What do you mean?
This links in nicely to what happened to you in the future from that, and that was the involvement with Hacked Off. Now, this is where it starts to get really dodgy, doesn't it? Can you tell the listeners about who approached you from Hacked Off, what they said, what they did for you, and then what happened?
Yeah, well, I had written the book. James Murray had helped me write it. It was basically my story, and you know, I'd already published. Well, I published Searching for Daddy, which is a memoir by Hodder and Stoughton. Got a Sunday Times bestseller. Published the second book, In for the Kill, and in the middle of it, In for the Kill had about, you know, phone hacking and you know, bits and bobs, but it got legaled so hard that, you know, they cut a lot out, actually, a lot. So it's not worth reading. And I had written another book and hoped after the trial to get it out. And Graham Johnson is a guy. I didn't really work with him. I think on one job, he and I sort of crossed swords. And I remember being in a hotel and he came in, and I remember lying on the bed and we were drinking champagne. But I don't think it was his job. I remember when the Real IRA came to London, and I had met them out in Crossmaglen. Some of them came. I sold the story to the Sunday Mirror, and Graham Johnson came along then, and I basically snuck him into a Real IRA meeting. which I then got really paranoid and then grossed us up to them. And then we went, then they said, right, well, because the Observer then turned up. So they said, right, we'll give a press conference. So we ended up in the press conference together. So I introduced him to the Real IRA, Graham Johnson, and he knew about my work. He'd been on the News of the World a short space of time. I think he got the sack. Then he'd moved to the Sunday Mirror. He'd got the job of investigations editor. And I was aware of him, and I thought, is he going to like hate on me because I do investigations for the Sunday Mirror? You know, is there going to be a sort of a pissing contest? But we kind of managed to avoid each other. But then he rang me, and the only other time I had involvement with him was when I was doing voluntary work for the RAF. And there was a girl there, an RAF girl, who had slept with him. And I couldn't believe it because she was really stunning. And I rang him and said, Graham, I've got a girl here in the RAF and saying that she slept with you. Is it true? And he said, yeah. So I didn't know him super well, but a bit. And so he rang me and said, oh, you know, I'm working for Hugh Grant right now and MP Evan Harris, and would you come out to dinner and talk about your book and, you know, maybe Hugh Grant making it into a movie? So I had been telling Sylvia Jones about all this, and I said, yeah, okay, I don't mind doing that. And he said, well, meet up with, so I went out to dinner, we talked to them, and then Evan Harris was there, and Evan Harris said, oh, we want you to come clean about spying in the Priory. And I said, well, I didn't really spy in the Priory. I had been going along and seeing the the guy who sees Kate Moss, Robbie Williams, Ruby Wax, every celebrity going. The only guy there who sees him is Mark Collins. He basically runs the place, and he does this thing where you go back in like time machine.
Yeah, I've heard of such a thing.
Yeah. So I obviously, when I heard of it as a journalist, I thought I want to do that. So I'd basically gone to him, said, you know, I had health insurance at the time, and you know, I said, I want this like thing that you've got. And he said, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. And I said, well, there is. My relationships don't work out and I'm not very happy. So he said, okay, I'll take you on and I'll let you come and do this therapy. Anyway, when the press basically found out, they would hassle me and they would say things like, oh, Liz Hurley is in there, Chris, when you go for your meeting, will you see if she's there? Now, I sort of sometimes stayed over. I went in the canteen all the time, and I did see loads of celebrities walking around, but I didn't want to like gross on them. And so because these journalists, because I would go out drinking with them, like the Sunday Mirror people, like Fiona Whitty and Dave Dillon, who's now the Mail on Sunday editor, we would all go out drinking together. And so they were like buddies. And so they would ring and say, Chris, come on, I haven't had a story for ages. Please go and look round the Priory and see if Liz Hurley is there and stuff like that. And I sort of, are you still there?
I am listening, yeah.
I didn't have a choice to say no. Someone else stronger than me might have been able to say no, but I just felt like some of them got nasty, not the ones that were my friends, but some of them got nasty and would say things like, well, you know, if you don't do this, we won't give you work, other work, you know, and stuff like that. And so
Yeah.
I felt in a position. And so I decided then to just kind of try and do it another way. Like, you know, if they were saying there was someone in there, I would say, well, if you've got phone numbers of relatives and stuff like that, and to try and, you know, do it that way. But I didn't want to walk round and look for people, you know, when I was on one of my appointments. It just seemed wrong. And what else seemed wrong was Mark Collins knew that I worked for the press. And, you know, he was obviously my doctor. So that would have been shitting on him, you know?
Yeah. And Hacked Off were obviously looking after the interests of celebrities, weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
Or making out they were. That was the front, anyhow.
Yeah, and I would obviously sometimes go in there and see celebrities coming out when I was like, you know, waiting to go and see them. And then also in the canteen, their canteen there's gorgeous. The food is awesome.
It is.
Oh man, it's nice. I would see celebrities there in the canteen. I would see them around the West Wing, in the garden. Of course, you'd see them everywhere and walk down the corridor, see them in their rooms. And so it wasn't, you can't get in there. It seemed very hard to get in, but obviously, because I was a patient, I could go in and, and they so basically hacked off wanting me to say that I had actually done it. And I said, well, no, actually, I wasn't doing it. They thought I was doing it, but I wasn't doing it. And what happened, as well as asking me for that, word got round, and they would, whenever a celebrity was in hospital, they would say, oh, Christine, you're good at that kind of thing. Why don't you find out if they're in hospital? Again, I knew what journalists were like. Number one, when they print the story, I would be at risk. Oh, how'd you find that out? Number two, they could drop you in it at any point,
Yeah.
they don't like you, decide that, they meet a cop and the cop says, I'll give you stories, you give me stuff. Oh, there's a girl works for us, she does people's medical records. So I didn't do it. I just blatantly didn't do it. But if they would say somebody was in hospital and they were dying, I would say, well, have you got phone numbers of relatives? Then I would ring a relative and think up something to say to find out. But I would never do anything that could get me in trouble. It's not that I'm a little angel that, I don't want to do anything bad. I just don't trust the press. I didn't trust them. I
I
just
don't
thought,
blame you.
yeah, they're dirty, they're stinking, and they would drop me in the shit the first chance they got. And I don't like being threatened either, which is what they were doing.
Yeah.
And so I thought, right, you'll play it that way, I'll play it that way. But Graham was saying that, oh no, you did it. And I thought, well, hang on, mate, you don't really know me. I grew up in care. I can quite easily be somebody that says, yeah, I'm going to do that and not do it. He seemed to think that, oh, no one would do something like that. Well, really? Try being on the end of bullying. I
So
mean,
was this when Evan Harris took you to the posh restaurant in Kew?
yeah, he took me there, and I was taped up. Sylvia Jones, who every email that came from Graham Johnson was passed to Sylvia and another journalist that was interested in all this. So everything's covered about what they did with me, and I became homeless at that time. And Evan said, "Oh, don't worry, we'll put you up somewhere." So they put me up in this flat, house, this beautiful riverside. It was beautiful, beautiful
By
riverside.
the River Thames. And just to remind the listeners, Evan Harris was actually an MP at this point,
Yeah, and he
member of the
is.
British Parliament.
Yeah, and he is the best friend of Hugh Grant. And Graham was constantly on the phone to Hugh Grant. And I was saying, oh, you talk, because he said, oh, yes, you, 3 bags for you. And then he'd put the phone down and I'd say to him, oh, how is Hugh Grant? And he'd say, no, that's not Hugh Grant. That's Hugh Grant's lawyer who's called Hugh. And then Evan would come along and he'd say, oh, you went out with Hugh last night. How was it? And I'd say to Evan, oh, I'd love to meet you, Grant. And he'd go, yeah, well, him and Graham get on really well.
Busted.
He was, yeah, I know. He was trying to hide it. It was so obvious. I thought, come on, the way you licked round him and all that.
Oh, for
So Hugh
God's
Grant
sake.
was behind funding the whole thing, really. I know it was Evan's money. So this house, I mean, it was
So you put you up in
2000.
this lush house by the Thames, very
Yeah,
desirable property. What
it
happens
was it
next?
it was isolated. It's a very sort of oh, it's gorgeous. It's called Ferryman's View, the place, and but it's totally isolated. So you've got
There's a
the river.
clue.
Well, I didn't think any better at the time.
But of
What
course,
they,
you wouldn't see that at the time because you
I
couldn't possibly have known what was going to happen next.
No, so they were meeting up with me and they were offering me 25 grand for all my invoices, no remittance advices. So when I worked for a paper, I would put my invoices in. When I got paid, I would get like a slip. So they wanted these. Now I couldn't actually find them. And they were saying to me, well, there's 25 grand in it for you when you find them. So there's this big back and fro. They give me a contract. When you find them, we'll go through each one and you will confess that you did illegal things. And there was all these celebrities in the background. Lily Allen was one of them. Heather Mills was another.
Oh, shocker.
All the celebrities.
All the annoying celebrities.
Yeah, they were going, she was going, and they know who you are. I'm not really, I mean, I know Tom Hardy. I'm not sort of celebrity hound, so it didn't really impress me. It impressed Evan. But he's saying they want you to do the right thing and come clean. Well, how can I come clean for something that I actually didn't do? And I didn't do because I like Mark Collins, because I'm like every other patient he has and has got a
I can
crush
kiss
on him.
my ass.
And I'm
Mm,
not about to shit on someone that I've got a bloody in love crush on. But they
yeah.
all thought that I'd done it. So I sort of, I said, and they were going, let's get the bad guys, let's get Murdoch and all that. So I thought, well, I didn't have any money. And I thought, can it hurt that I'll say that, I spied in the Priory? So I thought, okay, I'm homeless at the moment. I need the 25 grand. I thought I'll go along with it. It can't really hurt, And
Right.
so moved in to the place, this beautiful place, and it was quite scary because at nights this man would come across, and it was often misty, and this man would come across in a boat rowing a sort of a little canoe, and he would finish work and he would row up the Thames, so I was told, but I would see him. Literally, I would hear swishing at night, and I would look out the bedroom window and see this man in a boat like coming towards me. It was quite a creepy place, and I got a bit creeped out and thought, I don't really like it here. And I was only there.
What did you used to do, the man in the boat?
Well,
Did
he,
you?
he was going. I questioned people, and they said, oh, he finished his work and then rows all the way home. So basically, he was on his way home. But
Okay.
he came very near the house, and was a canoe out the back, a beautiful canoe that got nicked. It was a weird area.
Mm.
And Sylvia Jones said to me, oh, be careful they don't burgle you. No, she said before I moved there, she said, be careful they don't burgle you and to get your remittance advice. And I said, well, there aren't any. So they're going to be pretty, because I couldn't find them at this juncture. I thought maybe they were with my brother, I'd left them around my mother's house, or I didn't know where they were. And
Hmm.
so I said they can't really burgle me because I haven't got them. So anyway, I was there a week and going to leave the house one morning with my son, take him to the school run. At school's miles away, so it took about 2 hours to get there, 2 hours back, which is a nightmare. So I was doing 2 hours dropping him, 2 hours back,
Oh
then
God, in London traffic as well.
oh yeah, 2 hours back, and so I was doing 8 hours on the road a day. A nightmare, really. And I went to leave one day and couldn't shut the front door, and I thought, what the hell's going on? It was like broken, and so I did the school run and then came back and trying to mend the door, and I couldn't mend the door. Rang the landlord, try and get the door mended. They came over, were trying to fix it, and went and had a bath and thought, oh, must do something on the laptop. Went to use my laptop, no laptop. And thought, where's my laptop? Looked around for my camera, looked around for my old computer, everything gone, everything gone.
So let's get this right. No jewelry was stolen. No valuables
Oh,
were
and there was
stolen. Your
interest,
camera, your laptop, and an old
everything.
computer.
Yeah, and literally, I had a gold bracelet. Actually, no, I didn't have that gold bracelet at that time. That went missing at one point. But I had a Gucci watch, and it was just on the doorway. So all that laptopy stuff and the camera were in my bedroom, and the Gucci watch was just on the side as you come out the door. You couldn't miss it. Now, if I was a burglar, I would have picked that up. And not only that, upstairs in this gorgeous, gorgeous house. It was like a little villa and it had wooden stairs, like 70s style, very wide wooden stairs that were like just the wood, no sort of stair, if you know what I mean. And upstairs it had like Angora, like, oh God, it was gorgeous, white carpet, like Angora. And so I never used my shoes, obviously, upstairs. Downstairs was dark wooden floors. I would walk in bare feet. And kept it lovely and clean. Now, there was absolutely no CID came. I told them the whole story, and we looked around, there wasn't even one speck of dirt, not one speck of dirt. Not only was the watch and other jewellery not taken.
So
On-
when do you think somebody got in your house then? During the night while you were asleep?
that's what CID said. He said, I don't upset you. He said, but I think they came in at night. And I'm like,
Did the CID suggest any ideas
I
about?
talked about what was going on, and yeah, I just told him the whole story because I thought, and then I rang Graham and I said I'd been burgled, and he said, "Oh, that's a shame." And I said, "Yeah, it is a shame." And he said, "Just focus on you and your son. I haven't been beaten up, and you're okay." And I
And
was
who
like,
said that?
Graham, I
Right.
really, I
And
said, I think
at
so.
one point, you did have a bit of a veiled threat from somebody, didn't you?
Yes, it was Graham. I managed to find all my Daily Mail remittances. Now I worked for the Daily Mail for doing the same as I did for everybody else for many, many years, like over 10. And I found all my Daily Mail. Just for the listener, I haven't got them now. They're in somebody else's house in safekeeping. But these were itemized. So I told him that I'd found a few. So I said, oh, let's meet up. So we were going to meet up. And this is after the burglary. And he denied he did it. He said, oh, don't be stupid. Greg Miskew got involved, said, as if they'd burgle. I said, we work for the News of the World, and you're trying to get me to believe that Hacked Off are such sweethearts that they wouldn't burgle. Piss off. And he said, I see your point, but they didn't burgle you. I mean, it could have been the removal men. They saw me removing. I had all my valuables. I kept saying my valuables, and my valuables were basically the laptop and the camera. And they might well have come back.
It doesn't add up, Christine. It
Yeah.
doesn't add up, that theory, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So
But,
a professional did this. I mean, I
mm,
think I've told you in the past about just this very, very quickly. Jamie Bulger's dad, um, in Liverpool had men in black coming in, breaking into his house and going through his computer when he started researching about children. And so, I mean, if they could, if they'll do it for people like that. Jamie Bulger was a famous child murderer about.
oh, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, so if they have got people who are quite capable of doing that, and it smacks of intelligence services to me.
Do you think so? You,
Yeah,
so you
yeah.
don't think it was hacked off?
I hacked off have got somebody from intelligence services to break in. So what I'm saying is that this whoever it is can get in and out like that, like because Jamie Bulger's dad's neighbours saw these guys. They called them said men in black have been in your house. We wondered what was going on. And he says this is in his biography, and he says that he'd started researching into child murders and things like that. Well, it's pretty obvious what was going on there. The intelligence services didn't want somebody who at that point in time was prominent as the grieving parent of a murdered child, and the whole nation's heart went out to him, wouldn't want him, who was an ordinary average Joe in Liverpool, finding out about all the pedo stuff that's going on and possibly linked to the elites, and saying, "Oh my God, did everybody know this?" And exposing it. So they wanted to find out what he knew. So that's why they got somebody to go in his house. And I think, that's what's happened to you. Because if it was a burglar, they're going to take your Gucci watch. They're going to leave some bloody, trace, aren't they? But these
Well,
were
yeah,
professionals.
I didn't even know that they'd been in. It was that good.
Yeah. Well, that's what these people are trying to do, aren't they? That's how
Yeah.
assassinations happen, as
Well,
we well know.
Graham said, I was going to meet him with these couple of invoices in. One of them had Lily Allen's name on it, and he was like gagging for her.
Uh,
And one of them had an investigation about. I thought I'd give him this. Why not? And next thing, what happened? Something was leaking in the house. It was a pipe or something really big, and went to my son's school, and I had to pick him up, get him early, and go back to the house because something was leaking. It was a pipe or something. The house was flooded, a bit in the toilet. I mean, I guess I could have left it, but I said to him, I can't meet you. And he just went ape shit. He said, I've gotten on a train. I mean, but, if somebody's got an emergency, they got an emergency. I pulled my son out of school. That's how bad it was.
Yeah.
But he lost his cool, and he said, I'm going to come to down there, and I'm going to kick your door down to get those invoices. I really wasn't impressed.
And was it him that said about you and your son possibly being physically assaulted?
Yeah, he said, oh, at least they focus on that. And I thought, when I told him about the burglary, and I thought, oh, why should I focus on that and think myself lucky? Piss off, I wasn't insured, and I just brought a bloody new laptop, so that had gone, burn because
So
the other one was broke.
somebody was leaning on this Graham then, weren't they? Somebody was leaning on him to get the remittances from you, and they were probably threatening him. So whoever it was powerful.
Well, Max Mosley, he worked for Max Mosley and Hugh Grant. He was being paid £5,000 a
Oh
month.
my God, the plot thickens. Max Mosley, really? Right.
Because he was revealed in the News of the World having sex with his prostitutes and whipping them and dressed as a Nazi.
Yeah, I remember that.
I actually worked on that story.
Oh yes, he sort of like was implicated as one of the people who really wanted to get revenge on Murdoch and the News of the World because of that expose.
Yeah, so he and Hugh Grant were paying Graham £5,000 a month. I don't think they're doing it anymore. Somebody told me. The Sun came to me in the summer of 2018, is it? And they hired me, and they said, I want you to go through everything you've done for us. And so I went through every job, explained to them what I did, nothing illegal on each job. They were happy about that. They made me sign something to not talk about it publicly. Here I am being indiscreet. But so what is finished now? I don't owe them anything. Basically, I'd worked for the Sun for a long time, and they dumped me. I worked for them from 2003 to 2009, and they just dumped me. There was a guy they called Nick Parker, and he said, this is how sneaky journalists are and how much I didn't like them. Okay, there were one or two that I did like and editors that I respected and liked, but he hired me for a while on different jobs, and I was hired by the editor, actually, Chris Farrow. I worked with him on a few jobs, and as soon as he worked with me, he kind of listened in and thought, oh, I'll do what you do. And he had this thing on Heather Mills, and Heather Mills had been, he said that she was earning money doing talks and not giving the money to charity. So, are you still there?
Yes, this is Heather Mills, Paul McCartney's ex-wife, who he's now divorced from.
Yeah, so he had heard this. Now, had he given the investigation to me like he should have done, because he's a journalist that doesn't know how to investigate, I would have merely put a call in, pretended to be, I don't know, Bob Dylan's secretary, and said, we want we want this done, and said as a certain charity and how much will be going to the charity. It's simple, really, but Nick in his wisdom decided to set up this big scam. And again, another rule that they don't realize about investigations work is never promise somebody who you're investigating money. Why? Because when they find out they're not going to get the money, they'll be out for blood. Anyway, Nick, who's an idiot, said to Heather Mills, sent her all these fake emails saying he was a doctor in America, and saying that he could give her £1 million or something for a talk. And I just went back and fro, back and fro. And then he said to me, oh, here's a phone, turned up at my friend's house, said, here's a phone, left a phone there for me to pick up because I was somewhere else at this point, picked it up and said, oh, Heather Mills is going to ring at any moment. You say you're the assistant to this doctor who's him, and this talk is going to go ahead. And I thought, what a load of crap. I mean, it's just rubbish. Anyway, she rang and said, I know, hello. Oh, I know you're the News of the World. Well, it's a Sun. She thought it's the News of the World. She said, all the emails you've been sending me have got News International on them. And I just thought, oh, what? I thought,
God's
typical.
sake.
I felt like saying, yeah, it's someone called Nick Park. He's an idiot. Take legal action. But I didn't, because I worked for the Sun at the time. And I stayed on the phone with her to try and calm her down. She was really upset. I tried to calm her down. She stayed on the phone to her for half an hour. Anyway, she then put me on her website and called it I Scam the Scammers. Now, it wasn't my job. I wasn't involved for it. Never was paid for it. And all Nick Parker, nothing to do with me, actually. And but she said that. Anyway, turned out I was sacked for it, wasn't I? And I asked Chris Ferro why I was sacked. And he said, oh, because you talked to Heather Mills for too long. Why weren't you a professional and just slammed down the phone on her? I mean, she had found out who they were, so I'm supposed to be more angry by slamming down the phone.
So they scapegoated you. What year was this?
2009, and that was it. I didn't hear or see from them again. I even ran people like an ex-boyfriend of mine, Guy Patrick, to try and say, what's going on. But he was like, can't talk to you now, and hung up the phone, So I was literally, anyone that I knew in that field, they would just hang up. Oh, it's you, hang up. I don't even know what I did. And then when I got speaking to one of them, they said, it's in case Ian Edmondson or Mazza Mahmood recognized your voice and found out you were working for us. And then ages later, when I repeated that, somebody said back to me, what has Ian Edmondson and Mazza Mahmood got to do with us? And I said that was the excuse I was given for letting me go. So I remember talking to Greg Miskew at the time about that and what had gone on. Maybe he rang them and stuck the boot in. I don't know. There's a lot of backstabbing has gone on, especially.
It sounds like it. Listen, we've got about a quarter of an hour left. Should we do a part 2 of your story next week? And in the last 15 minutes that we've got, what would you like to say?
Well, finding out that Judd Apatow is going to do this TV series, I just feel that what aspect of it is he going to tell? I mean, is he going to tell, how the phone hacking came, from a direction that was heavily involved with MI6? Are they going to portray John, or are they going to just leave that out? Is it going to be, oh, Mulcair is just a normal little private detective, and he was doing that, and aren't private investigators in the UK silly? So the whole of America pisses themselves laughing at our dotty English private detectives, bungling private detectives, and they laugh their balls off at us. I mean, is that what's going to go on? Because it makes my blood boil, actually.
So this is going to be for the American audience, this series.
Obviously, if Judd Apatow's involved, then it will go out in America. He's an American, so it will go big. Yeah,
I wonder if it's going to be a Netflix special.
I think Netflix was mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah. What a surprise. Okay.
I'm not having it over my dead body. Actually, over my dead body, am I having it? Am I having that told in that way? It just makes me angry because I've worked with and for really good private investigators, and we've got the cream of private investigators here in England, the cream. And if they're just going to make us a laughing stock in America with there would be such a thing as a private investigator that would go and work for someone like the News of the World and do all that kind of stuff, like, oh, let's listen in to the royal family. Then they're going to make the English look a laughing stock, and I don't want it. I'm not having it. And do you know what? I have written to them, so now they know the full story. And I think I'll send them this radio show, so now they know the full story. But do you know what? I think it's going to be a Nick Davies book scenario where, oh, Christine, thank you, but you go over there, love.
Well, who have you written to then?
I wrote to the film company that are
The Judd Apatow production.
yeah.
Right. Okay. I think we should do a part 2 to this next week, because there's still a lot more to be said about what unfolded and what you know about some of the main characters and your interaction with them. Do you think Mazen Mahmood will get drawn into this?
Well, I know
somehow?
Greg had smeared him and said he used Mulcair. He told me he didn't use him. He said there was one ex-directory number he wanted done. He knew Greg gave it to Mulcair. He came back wrong. He said he didn't touch him with a barge pole, and he was determined to get him out. In fact, he was working hard to get him out. He said, I want him out. I don't like him. He said, he's full of shit. He said, and I'm working hard to get him out. So he was working hard to get him out. Boyle was going to tear it down. As well as that, how is this new film company going to portray how they were caught out? Are they going to say it was John who tore them down? Because I know for a fact it was John. He said to me, I'm going to destroy them. And he's not somebody, he knew everything that Mulcair was doing. He knew his home address, he knew his bank account, he knew his modus operandi. All he had to do was go and meet one of his pal top cops and say, this is what this guy's doing. He's doing it for the News of the World. Take him away. And, that obviously is what happened. Are they going to tell that story, or are they just going to say, oh, look, he was doing it and all he got nicked? And the police, now along came in Mr. Bobby in blue and, they got nicked. I mean, I don't know. It's just really going to make us look silly. But
there's still the top cops aspect to this. And obviously, John Boyle had some very powerful contacts to be able to put this into motion. But the question is, was it purely an act of revenge on John Boyle's part that has led to the downfall of News International and the closure of the News of the World newspaper, which according to online had been going for 168 years, and lots of prominent, powerful people being brought into the frame, like Rebekah Brooks, who is the editor of The Sun, who we well know was friends with David Cameron, the British Prime Minister at the time.
Well, I think that Coulson, and it's online, you can see me on News at 10 talking about this. They didn't let me get a bloody word in. But Coulson was a scapegoat because the guy that said yes to phone hacking, that said yes to Boyle when he first brought it was Phil Hall, my ex-boyfriend Phil Hall, who was then the editor of the News of the World, the overall editor of the News of the World, the overall news editor of the News of the World. He's the one that said to it, not Coulson. So why did Coulson go to prison? Why didn't Phil Hall go to prison? Again, he was another one whose name wasn't mentioned in the whole thing.
Oh, well, that's bizarre. Phil Coulson went to bloody prison.
I didn't think that was right, but they invited me on the news, but I just sat there like a stuffed parrot. I couldn't get a bloody word in.
Was that with the female detective?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's available on YouTube. If you look up Christine Joanna Hart, that'll come up. Wow, I mean, if George Clooney did make a film about this, it'd have to be about 3 hours long to fit everything in, because I mean we're only about halfway through everything. Because there's so much more happened after that, regarding investigations, prosecutions. Hearings at the House of Commons, led by Keith Vaz, which is an MP called Keith Vaz, whose conduct is questionable, to say the least. So final words for now, Christine. We'll do part 2 next week if you want to do that. So to sum up, you're very upset. You don't feel like the phone hacking scandal has been represented accurately. I think it's been spun and a narrative has been spun. I think Nick Davis was part of that. That seems perfectly obvious.
So do I.
Yeah. But ultimately,
I feel bad about it. Sorry, Carrie.
Well, I was just going to say why. We don't know for a fact why. And with the re-emergence of Rupert Murdoch's new news media channel, and this Judd Apatow series coming out, it's very fishy. Somebody's got something that they need to prove.
I think that if they're going to tell that fake story, they need to be aware that there are people, obviously Sylvia Jones, obviously James Hanning, the ex-independent on Sunny. I'm not the only one, I'm not the only one.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
If they're going to tell the sort of fake story, I think they need to be really careful, because, there are people out there that know the truth that aren't sort of happy about the sort of, what Nick Davis has done, really. And everyone thinks, oh, he's the Guardian guy, and they dealt with...
Oh, it's Mr. Goody Two-Shoes.
Oh, yeah, and they dealt with Julian Assange. I mean,
he's Mr. Crusader for the people.
I thought that about him. That troll that trolled me around was like, oh, you didn't meet Nick Davis. You didn't. I've just spoke to him on Twitter and he's never met you.
Oh, what a load of Betty Swallowes. I've met Nick Davis, Ethan.
Well, I said to him, it's interesting. This shouldn't talk back to trolls. I said, it's interesting you think so highly of him. Because, I mean, he should be a hero that somebody says, yeah, I work with Nick Davis. I've still got the contract and oops, sorry, you're still there?
Yeah, you're still on. I'm listening.
But I don't feel proud to know him. I don't. I think, I just feel sad about that.
Well, yeah, it's a massive disappointment to find out that he was working for the dark side. It looks like. But why? Why? Mr. I defend Julian Assange and the freedom of the press, blah, 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 democracy. Why has he been turned? All these questions we need answering.
Yeah, and do you know what he said to me as well? Because I emailed him and I said, actually, because it's taken me a long time to get over this, because my life was ruined. I'm basically a top investigator. Whenever I go, like to say Montrose, I get interviewed by them. They're like, wow, you're brilliant. We'll give you loads of work. Next thing I don't hear about them. And I know it's because they've gone to people like Gary Watkinson and they say, oh, do you know, she used to work for the News of the World. She's worked for the press.
Yeah, it's like you've been blacklisted.
Yeah, I've been blacklisted. So Boyle, and there's Boyle sitting out in his £8 million mansion, and everybody's rushing around, including Nick Davis, to protect him. And it's taken me, and I know it's 10 years since then, we're now in 2020. It's taken me a long time because John and I mean, we were lovers. We were, and I know him intimately from when I was 19 to, when I was, I last saw him when I was like 35. And it's like, he stabbed me in the back there and he brought that into my world. I mean, he had no right to do it. And it's taken me a long time to get over it, and to find out that he actually gets away with, not even being mentioned is a bit hard to take, because he's still out there in his mansion. That, I mean, Operation Wheaton, when they saw it, they said to me, how much is that place worth? I said, it's about 8 million. They went, whoa, it's amazing. I mean, it's a gated estate. I mean, I'm not being bitchy or hateful because I'm living in a tiny little rented hovel with damp everywhere. But I mean, I don't think I deserve the shitty end of the stick. And I think, because I didn't do anything bad. And I also think that, John should have at least have his name brought up in it. I mean, he introduced me to an ex-MI6 officer. I was doing a bit of work for him. This was around 2000.
Oh, coming up to the end. Well, Christine, it's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much for coming on the show and telling your story. We will be back to on Hanging Scandal next week. Thank you for listening. Expect to listen to Revolution Radio Studio B. Thank you. Good night.